Welcome folks, I'm Livvvid. I'm a newcomer to the Final Fantasy series and most JRPGs in general. In my first Final Fantasy video, I played the pixel remaster of the very first game. I liked it a lot, and in today's video, I continue the series by playing its sequel, Final Fantasy II, for the first time ever. The only thing I ever heard about Final Fantasy II growing up was how controversial it is, being seen as the black sheep of the franchise due to its unique leveling system. I don't really think that bias is affecting me going in though. I'm going in with an open mind and I'll be as honest as I can be. Developed by Square and originally released in 1988 on the Famicom, Final Fantasy II is the follow-up to the original Final Fantasy released just a year prior. Square had captured lightning in a bottle and they weren't taking a rest. However, the United States wouldn't see this sequel entry for the first time until 2003. That's because by the time the original Final Fantasy was localized and released for the United States, it was already 1990. 3 years after it had originally released in 1987. By then, Final Fantasy II and III had already been released in Japan, and they were on the Famicom, or the NES to us Westerners. But the era of the NES was coming to a close, as the Super Nintendo was about to be released. Rather than taking on the huge and costly project of localizing the actual Final Fantasy II and III for an aging system about to be replaced by its successor, Square just didn't release Final Fantasy II for the United States. Instead, they would later release Final Fantasy IV as Final Fantasy II on the Super Nintendo. They didn't want to confuse players by releasing a fourth entry into a series where a market had only known about the first. And it wasn't like there was a mass communication revolution coming around the corner where we could learn all about those missing two games anyway.
It spans the globe like a superhighway. It is called Internet.
Oh, I will be playing the actual Final Fantasy II through the Pixel Remaster. There are numerous ways to play this game now, as it's had many releases at this point. For me, the Pixel Remaster is just the most accessible way to play it. There will be differences that I won't know about and bonus content from other versions not on this one, but to me bonus content is just that, it's a bonus. If you'd like to inform me about the version you like and why, just let me know in the comments. The pleasant surprise about starting a series on Final Fantasy was how supportive its fans were on my first video. There was no shortage of people willing to provide information and context. It helps me a lot behind the scenes and I really appreciate you guys. As you start the game, you're given default characters rather than choosing classes. This was an immediate shock as I liked how you got to choose your party composition in the first Final Fantasy. There are also preset names this time around that you can still customize, but when I was doing some research for the video before I started, I noticed many people using the characters' default names to refer to them. Furion, Maria, Guy, and Leon. I'm just going to stick with the default names this time around to avoid any confusion. The story and the world itself are not a continuation of the first game, and unless the title clearly says it's a sequel to a numbered Final Fantasy, like 10-2 for example, each numbered entry is a new story and world. A long-lived peace is at an end. The Emperor of Palamacia has brought an army of monsters from the underworld to conquer the land. A rebel army rises in the kingdom of Fynn, but the rebels' castle falls to the Empire. The rebels withdraw to Altair. 4 youths from Fynn also flee, but were caught by some Black Knights. Alright, time to show these Black Knights who's Oh. So yeah, this is a fight you're meant to lose. We are saved though and brought to Altair. A princess named Hilda makes sure we're okay. But as she's there, she mentions something about the Empire building a dreadnought in Bafsk and how it will drastically tip the odds in their favor if finished. As we wake up and meet back with our two friends, I notice that we're talking to each other. The player characters didn't speak in the last game, so this is new. It's not much though, and our characters have small moments where they show some personality, but we're still far from a deep main character driven narrative. We meet with Princess Hilda in her throne room, where she allows us to stay with the rebels, but denies our group entry into the rebel army as we're unproven. The princess tells us to just go home. Maria reminds the princess that her home was back in Fynn, and so were our late parents who were killed in the attacks. Maria's brother, Leon, is also not with us, likely taken prisoner by the Empire back at Fynn. Our group decides to go look for him despite the princess telling us not to. Before leaving, Princess Hilda gives us the password for the rebels, Wild Rose. This is where we learn of the keyword system. You can learn and ask about important keywords that help you stay on track with the story. When you learn something, it's committed to memory. The ask command will give you more information about keywords you've learned. Wild Rose is pretty cool because you can drop that phrase to different characters who may be rebels out in public, and they'll reveal that they're a rebel putting on an act like this old man here. My opening explanations were longer than this game takes to start, by the way, and I still love how quickly these games begin. The opening was intense, fast-paced, and interesting. Less than a few minutes in, we're walking around and playing the game. I love brevity in older games. Combat in Final Fantasy II is largely the same from the first game. It's a turn-based strategy with our enemies on the left and our own party on the right. But there is one major change. Well, let me try my best at explaining the leveling system in this game. In Final Fantasy II, you don't level up in a traditional sense. It's not like you go to level 2 by simply getting enough experience from enemies. Instead, we have skill levels. Skill levels are divided into two broad categories: weapon and magic skill levels. Weapons are divided into 7 subcategories: swords, spears, axes, staves, knives, bows, and unarmed. Most of these weapons can be held with one hand, and the other hand can hold a shield, and you can also dual wield weapons if you wanted to. Magic skill levels are divided per their spell. For example, Cure and Fire have their own skill level. Actually using your weapons or magic skills will improve the corresponding skill. It's basically doing the thing to get better at the thing. If you use bows a lot, you get better at bows. If you use the Cure spell a lot, the Cure spell gains levels and becomes better and better. Your characters still have stats of their own that increase over time. But rather than going from level 1 to level 2 and getting some stats distributed, you will get increases to stats from actions that you take. Strength will increase by doing physical attacks. Agility will increase if you wear light armor or no armor during fighting. MP, intellect, and spirit will grow using magic. If you get hit a lot, your endurance will increase. Now all of this is definitely different than what I knew from the first game. Many versions of Final Fantasy II would have situations where you can repeatedly attack your own characters to raise endurance, for example. Or repeatedly casting spells for much longer than necessary because you wanted to raise your MP. In the Pixel Remaster, they move stat progression around, so you just have to do normal grinding against enemies and your stats will increase. When it comes to my opinion about this new leveling system, I'm going to mention it throughout the video as it evolves and changes. I want to showcase at what points in the game it feels great and other points where I don't like it so much. Although the characters are predetermined, you still get to choose how your characters are developing based on the weapons and spells you give them. When it came to buying items for my characters, I didn't really know who was good at what. But my assumption was that if leveling was tied to the weapons and spells, it probably didn't matter who learned what. In the beginning of the game, I bought 2 Cure Tomes for myself and Marie to learn Cure, helping out with healing, and a Fire Tome for Maria. I guess I just decided she'd be the Black Mage. For Guy, I removed his axe and opted to train him in Unarmed. I love the Monk class from the first game, so I had to have that back again. He seemed naturally strong, and if there was anything the first Final Fantasy taught me, Unarmed can be extremely powerful. I leave Altair to begin searching for Leon. My first battle was against a bunch of Hornets, and both parties were missing a lot. When we did finally start hitting, it was quick work. But this is where we can see the leveling system in effect. As we leveled up the respective moves, we got more accurate. Maria started shooting 2 arrows at once with her bow. Early in the game, I was liking this different take on leveling because it was satisfying to see such early results after only a few levels. Oh, and in combat, I noticed my characters would get poisoned but heal after battle. What, Square? You didn't think I could handle it? Like I've never been through the Marsh Cave before? All jokes aside, there is lower level poison that will heal after battle, but there is still traditional poison that you need to cure with antidotes. I spent a decent amount of time leveling up my skills just outside Altair. It was fun figuring out how leveling worked and realizing how much freedom I had to kind of do whatever I wanted with my party. After a few battles for some experience in Gil, I bought Maria the 2 other elemental spells so I could start leveling those up too. Maria being my pseudo black mage was also nice because she was getting better with the bow, and if I wanted to conserve her NP, I could still attack with the bow for good damage. The interaction with using Maria's bow when I didn't want to use MP also made me realize something. In a game genre with tons of random encounters, this leveling system made me slow down for a second and think how I could use this encounter to invest in my team. Rather than flee, I could take advantage of each encounter to improve something about my team, even if it wasn't necessary to win the fight. In a small sleepy town north of Altair is the village of Gatria. There wasn't much here, but an NPC is really worried about the Empire's dreadnought. So this whole dreadnought thing isn't a state secret the rebel leadership knows about. Everyone knows this thing is being built and will take out the rest of the areas not controlled by the Empire. I leave Gatria to explore a little more of the west, where I would meet some new enemies. A couple of vampire girls and a killer mantis. Oh, well, I'm sure they'll be... Oh, well, that's great. I walked past an invisible line and paid the price. I barely walked outside the zone where the starter enemies were. I guess I'll be more cautious going forward, but mark my words, I'm gonna get revenge on the vampire girls. We arrive at Fynn, which is being occupied by scary-looking Imperial soldiers. We have to walk past them and avoid contact, but there are still monsters roaming the streets. We make our way to the tavern where the bartender is reluctantly serving a legion of Imperial soldiers. I mention the password Wild Rose to let him know that we're cool. He tells us about the hidden door with a wounded soldier and runs off. In this hidden room, we meet Scott, Prince of Kashuan. He is alive but dying. Scott tells us Finn fell quickly due to the betrayal of Count Borgen. And the little Benedict Arnold has been made into an Imperial general as a reward. He also tells us to tell Hilda that he loves her, but changes his mind. He then gives us a ring as he passes away. The ring text says that someone in Gatria knows how to use it, so we're going back. And this time I'll stick closely to the beaten path so vampire girls from Hot Topic don't harass me again. Since we made the daring entrance into Finn to retrieve the ring, Hilda allows us to join the rebel cause. Our first task for the rebels is to make contact with a man named Joseph living in Salamand. He can help us find a valuable material named Mithril. This is an important material that will help the rebels be better equipped against the Empire. We speak to Minwu, who says we must pass through the port of Paloom. He gives us his canoe and joins our party. Minwu is extremely powerful compared to the rest of my team, and I immediately assume he's only going to be temporary. That assumption would go on to be correct, but I didn't know it for sure at the time. The 4th slot in your party will be a revolving door all game. Minwu's great with magic too. Jeez. He has like every spell in the game. I was going to go back and give the vampire girls what for, but I'm part of something bigger now. It's not about my vendettas anymore. We sail across the lake to the next town, Paloom. It's a port city that hasn't been attacked by the Empire yet, but full of pirates. I pick up some new copper armor for Furion and Guy. Then I buy Blink, which raises the evasion of who I cast it on, and will teach it to Furion. He's kind of turning into my paladin character. Pretty good with physical attacks, but also can cast white magic. I also bought Cure for Guy, since I figured why not. With some new gear, I pay for a ride to the next city, Poft. I meet a man named Sid who flies airships. We get a list of different locations we can fly to and how much airfare is. Some of the travel can be really expensive though. I hitch a ride to Salamand to meet with our rebel contact. Salamand is a snowy village far in the north. There was a bevy of new items and spells I could buy here, so I pick up a longsword for Furion. I find our contact Joseph and ask him about Mithril. He's cautious at first, understandable, but he does reveal that the people of Salamand are being forced to work in the cave at Semet Falls. Joseph will only help us if we free the citizens of Salamand from the cave. I didn't want to march to a cave likely full of tough new enemies without some training first. So I grind a bit outside of Salamand by battling some Sam Squatches.
It's Sam Squam and there's one right outside my fucking door right now. He's trying to get into my shed.
Literally hundreds of sightings all across North America for generations now.
Semet Falls is west of Salamand. We go west and use our canoe to go back up the river leading to the falls. This will be our first proper dungeon. It has multiple false doors leading to enemies, with one leading to the next area. False doors and dead ends are a major part of dungeon design in this game. Eventually I find and release the hostages from Salamand, but we still need the Mithril deeper in the dungeon. It was in this dungeon that I started to notice Guy wasn't getting any more XP from fights when using unarmed. This is because the enemies in my area were too weak for him to get any valuable training from. They weren't surviving long enough for him to meet a minimum threshold for leveling up unarmed. This made me think about how using him at this point of the game would be siphoning experience from my other party members. So I could either raise his cure spell that I had just given him, or honestly just tell him to defend because the other characters are still leveling up against these enemies. It's definitely strange how it affects your thinking for character progression, but I still didn't hate it at this point, it was just different. And with Minwu, since I was convinced he wasn't staying in our party forever, I usually told him to just defend, and to only use powerful spells if I absolutely needed them. On the 5th level of the dungeon, we encounter a land turtle. God, I love these sprites in Final Fantasy games. It was a tricky fight because it seemed like it was immune to some of my physical attacks, so Maria had to lay down some black magic pain. The first proper boss is the Sergeant, who knows that we're looking for Mithril, and says he's gonna give it to us alright. The Sergeant wasn't that harmful to my team, but he had bulk. So I got a little cute and used him as a punching bag for Guy so he could finally gain some XP to his unarmed skill. I also had Maria gaining levels on her other black magic elemental spells too. After defeating the Sergeant and getting the Mithril, I head back to Princess Hilda. The princess tells us to take the Mithril to the town blacksmith. He will take the Mithril and supply the rebels with armor and weapons made from it, and we can buy some. We talk to the princess again, and she wants us to journey to Bask. The rebels have an agent working there who can get us to the Dreadnought, where we can destroy it. We head over to Poft and take an airship to Bask, a small village occupied by Imperial forces. They're being jerks to everybody and screaming at them to get back to work. I find the rebel contact who is actually an Imperial soldier. He's complaining about Borgen, the traitor, and his leadership. He tells us to take a secret entrance to the Dreadnought through the sewers. Before going though, I got more supplies. And this is where I found out that the devs had adjusted the prices on the ethers since the first game. It was for the best. They were so cheap in the first game, and it kind of made the dungeon crawling a bit redundant because with 50 ethers you never had to worry while in a dungeon. Because all of your magic users could restore their MP and heal everybody or restock their uses of offensive magic. We descend down the Bath's caves to find the Dark Knight we've been hearing about, but he says it's too late, the Dreadnought is complete. And then the traitor Borgin reveals himself to taunt us even more. The airship begins to go around shelling any city that resists the Empire. I go back to Poff to find it in ruins. I talk to Sid, an expert in airships, who explains that all airships use Sunfire. In order to stop the Dreadnought, we need to take out the engine which utilizes the Sunfire. Altair is in ruins, and I rush in to speak to the princess. Hilda says the attack on Altair left her ailing father even sicker than before. Minwu, being a white wizard, leaves our party to see to the king. Hilda explains that the airship power source of Sunfire is the crest of the Kashuan Kingdom. The king tells us that the Kashuan Kingdom put the Sunfire behind a seal in case they fell to the enemy. In order to break that seal, we need the goddess Bel. Joseph back at Salamand knows all about it, so we return to the snowy Salamand. Back at Salamand, Joseph will tell us about his snowcraft, which will allow the user to go through snowy mountain passes. We'll need it in order to retrieve the goddess Bel. He keeps it hidden back in the caverns where we freed the hostages earlier. He feels bad for not really helping us much after we save the hostages, and he joins the party to help get the craft and ultimately the goddess Bel. Joseph is really strong, and he's also unarmed like Guy. Once back in the cave, Joseph opens up the secret passage, and inside we find the snowcraft. We can now head north through the mountain pass with our new vehicle. Oh, this is what it looks like? That's not what I expected it to look like at all. It's basically just a schooner. In the snowy passes, we find snowmen, cousins of the Samsquanches. At the end of the mountain pass, we find an entrance into the snow caverns. The snow cave is pretty lengthy, with tons of dead ends and empty rooms. I found an ancient sword, but my accuracy was going to be super low if I used it, so I decided to stick with my mithril sword. On the final floor, I find a friendly colony of beaver. This is where Guy reveals that he can speak beaver? What the hell do you mean you can speak beaver? I'm pretty sure we're all from Finn, right? And I never saw any beavers when I went there. I don't know, maybe there's going to be a spin-off game explaining those adventures, we'll see. Guy translates back beaver speech, saying that a secret passage in the wall to the right, I can't finish this sentence, saying that the secret passage in the wall to the right has the bell, but it's guarded by a monster. That monster is an Adamantoise. It has really high defense, it can hit hard too. I used Maria and her level 3 blizzard spell I had been leveling up, which is super effective against it. After defeating it, we retrieve the bell. As we're leaving though, we're confronted by Borgin. He's been nothing but a mess up for the Emperor since he switched side, and he's pissed at us about it. So it's another boss fight. And it was extremely easy, just a couple of hits from Joseph and Furion. Take that, you Benedict Arnold. But he booby-trapped the cave to take us with him. A massive boulder bursts down the corridor, and Joseph sacrifices himself to stop the boulder so that we can escape. We rush out of the cave to avoid any more traps. I can't believe Joseph's gone. His loss hits my team hard. I wasn't expecting to lose him so quickly, but I'll avenge him. We arrive at the Kashuan Keep by airship. When we enter, we see Sunfire burning in a pit. Behind it is the sealed door that we open with the bell. Inside we meet Gordon, who knows his way around the castle because he's also looking for Sunfire, an eagle's torch by which to carry it. Since we have the same goals, he joins our party. Gordon's a bit of a jack of all trades when he joins our party. He's level 22 with most stats and level 2 with all weapons. He comes equipped with a spear, which is something I haven't used before, so I stick with that. The keep has some really cool enemies like were-rats and wild Adamantoises. It wasn't too long ago that these were bosses. And while it was difficult, I was still happy about it because I had hit level caps with the other characters and their skills. So it was getting kind of boring not seeing anything being raised up as I fought endless enemies. Now I could have done what I mentioned earlier and start working on other stats, but it was getting to the point where I would have had to revamp all of my character's items just so that they can get experience in other stuff that I didn't ultimately want to use. It still would have helped to raise my character's core stats, but I'm just being honest, I didn't really feel like doing it. I was starting to see some of the aspects to the leveling system that I did not enjoy. I found a werebuster in a chest, a spiked mace that is effective against beasts. I just handed it over to Gordon, since he still was a blank slate at this point, and it raises his attack by 10 points. We make our way to the boss guarding the torch, Red Soul. Now this bastard is annoying. He does a bunch of AoE elemental attacks that hurt like hell, and there was some trial and error because he can leech my elemental attacks to regain health. I wasted a few turns figuring it out if it was just the type of elemental attack I was using, or if he could just do that with all elemental attacks. I had Furion set up the move Shell, which raises my team's spell defense, and I hammer away with Guy and Gordon. After I stopped giving it health back through elemental attacks, I eventually overcome Red Soul. I retrieve the torch, and then capture some Sunfire Flame with it back in the beginning of the castle. But as we leave, we see Cid's airship being captured by the Dreadnought. Well, that's going to make traveling a lot more time consuming. We need to find the Dreadnought to free Cid's ship. But just south of the castle, we can get a little something to help us out. The Chocobo Forest, where I find a Chocobo to help us run back to town and avoid encounters. Ah, yeah! Even though I was new to the series, I knew what Chocobos were, and I was wondering when I'd see one for the first time. It was pretty exciting being able to ride one. The only bummer is that it'll scamper off when we're done with it, so I make sure to use it all the way back to Altair to check back with the princess. But when we get back, it turns out she felt bad sending us all over the place, and she wanted to go meet us at Kashuan Castle, using Cid's airship. So now we've got to go take out the airship and play the Legend of Hilda to save the day. We find the airship far to the southeastern portion of the map. It has some of the toughest enemies I've faced yet, like were-panthers. God, they are so annoying because they're really good at keeping me in the battle when I try to flee, and they have poisonous attacks that I need to use antidotes to cure. And then there is, of course, the Imperial forces that laugh at any weapons used against them, forcing me to use my precious magic spells at the expense of MP. I find the princess and Cid in a cell and release them. Cid tells us to take the Sunfire and throw it into the engine. Deeper in the Dreadnought, I find some chests, but one of them had a Hill Gigas waiting for me. It wasn't a hard fight, but it's just a beast that again laughed at weapons, and I needed to use precious MP to take it down. I was getting nervous because Maria was dangerously low on MP. I did end up getting an ice shield from the chest after the battle though. It's slightly stronger than Furion's mithril shield, but its real benefit is being resistant to fire attacks. After dodging a bunch of guards, I find the engine room and throw the Sunfire into it. Aw, hell yeah, a meltdown. And the Dark Knight is pretty furious. He was the one overseeing its production, so he had even more attachment to it than others. We rush out of the Dreadnought as it's exploding. I hope a bunch of were-panthers die in that explosion. We make it out of the Dreadnought, and Cid helps us escape on his airship. We head back to Altair to see that the king is not doing so well. He says Gordon has grown a lot and wants him to lead the rebel army. Then he reminds Minwu about the legendary magic that has been sealed away. And the seal will only be broken when the world stands at the brink of destruction. The king says we need to go to Deist, home of the Dragoons. They were said to have been killed by the Empire, but the king refused to believe it. Just then, the king dies. We speak with Gordon about wyverns and dragoons. If we can recruit a wyvern, it could be a huge ally in this war. With Gordon taking his new position leading the army, we go back down to 3 members. It's time to head to Deist. Seeking passage on a boat for Deist, we meet up with a pirate named Layla, who just so happens to be wanting to go there too. Maria points out how convenient that is, but Furion says we don't have much of a choice. And of course it was an ambush. They tell us to lay down our loot and we can live. We refuse and have to fight a rabble of pirates. Rather than take out Layla, we ask her to join our cause. And she likes the idea. Layla joins our party. Layla has a pretty good agility stat and is good with daggers, swords, and bows. I decided to lean into her being a nimble attacker, giving her a mithril knife and a main goche? I don't know how to say that. I hadn't done any dual-wielding offensive weapons yet, so I wanted to try it out with her. With Layla's crew added to our team, we also get access to a ship. We start to encounter sea creatures, and luckily I had a trident from a previous dungeon, which is a special spear that does extra damage to aquatic creatures. The cool thing about the ship in Final Fantasy II is that you can disembark from your ship anywhere you want, rather than having to dock at a port, making it easier to go to new areas and go back to familiar places. I take this opportunity to grind on sea snakes. They were the first enemies in a while where they were tough enough to continue help my characters grow, but also right next to a town for healing when I needed. Castle Deist is on an island at the top right portion of the map. The castle is in ruins after the Empire attack. We find a scared little boy who runs to his mother. She explains that her husband was a dragoon, warriors that use wyverns. But her husband and fellow dragoons were killed by the Empire after the wyverns were poisoned. There is one remaining wyvern that is trying to communicate with us, but we're going to need a special pendant to understand it. We can find it in the caverns to the north of the castle. But first, I go around opening chests from the former Dragoons as they won't be needing what's inside any longer. I find a wing sword, which is effective against flying enemies. The cavern to the north is full of undead enemies and the remains of Dragoons. I find a pendant on one of the remains, and with it I can talk with the Wyvern. The Wyvern tells us of a Dragoon named Ricard, who was supposed to find the ultimate magic, but never returned. It then gives us an egg that it wants submerged back in the cavern's life spring. This egg is the last remaining Wyvern egg. Without the waters of the life spring, it will die. Back in the caverns, I descend deeper to try to find the life spring. I find the life spring, but it's guarded by a boss, the Chimeras. There are 4 of them, and they are tough in pretty much every way. I used Furion to set up Protect and Shell to give me defense against both forms of their attacks. After stabilizing the battle with my defensive spells, the fight became much more manageable, and I slay the Chimeras. I place the Wyvern egg into the life spring. I return to the rebel hideout to discuss the next mission. Gordon tells me Hilda's been acting weird and wants me to check on her. I find her alone in a room and she wants to discuss something with me, specifically. Then she has my companions leave and tells me to come closer. Well, I mean, how can I resist the princess? Oh my god. Guys, I wasn't gonna do it. I didn't fall for it. Not even close. It's the Lamia Queen. This temptress hits hard and her attacks can put my team to sleep. She even takes control of Layla and makes her attack me. Furion had set up Blink, so it was harder for Lamia to land her attacks, while Guy laid down the punishment. The real princess has been captured and taken to the Colosseum near Palamacia to be used as a prize. Gordon demands to come with us and gives command of the army to Layla. The Colosseum is far to the southeast of the map. Before I go in though, I was encountering really tough enemies, which worried me about what would happen in the Colosseum. So I decided to stay outside and grind a little bit before entering. There were antlions and wild chimeras, and then land rays. I haven't liked any species of ray since they took out Steve Irwin, so I'm happily going to kill a bunch of them for XP. After massacring the rays for extra levels, I enter the Colosseum. Once you walk in, bombastic imperial music plays and you're trapped by the gates. You actually get to meet the Emperor himself too. He says we must fight for the princess. Lumbering out of a cage and lurching towards us is a behemoth. Very cool presentation and sprite, but the fight is super easy. He just uses physical attacks, but I had enough bulk and healing that it didn't really faze me. After the fight, he says we are going to get our reward. Wow, what a noble emperor. Nope, he lied. We're thrown into a cell. We're locked in a cell until Paul arrives to bust us out and says he's repaying the debt from us saving him in the mines earlier. Free from the cell, we search for the princess. After going through some random encounters, we find her cell. We have Gordon leave with the princess so we can create a distraction. Now that she's safe, we can leave the Colosseum the way we came in. When you go back to that area, you can find a rebel base camp, which is getting ready to launch an attack to retake Finn. Before I get started though, I wanted to prepare by getting some items from Gatria. It's important to note that by this time in the game I had tons of gil. I could pretty much buy any status healing items I needed in abundance. Well, maybe not elixirs, which are 50,000 a piece, but pretty much anything else. Now that I'm prepared, I meet back up with the rebels for the attack. The plan of attack is that the main rebel army will fight a traditional siege, while my party slips in. As we enter the castle, we're met by Layla again. I liked her the first time around, so she's welcome to help us out. And I had been leveling up my Berserk spell, which raises attack. So with Layla's dual-wielding weapons and my Berserk boost, she was going crazy. In the main throne room, we confront the boss, Gotos. He says something about him being set up for a trap. He was trying to set himself up with haste, but I kept using Berserk on Guy and my other melee attackers, so I was unloading a ridiculous amount of damage. After the fight, Princess Hilda retakes her rightful place in the castle. Princess Hilda then asks us to go to the land of Mysidia to meet up with Minwu. It's there where the rumored Ultima spell may be found, which can help us in the fight against the Emperor. Before we leave, we need special masks, one residing in this very castle. And she teaches us Ekmet Telos, which is another phrase we can use like Wild Rose. We immediately use the new phrase on a hidden passage in the castle. You go down a lengthy maze of floors with easier enemies from earlier in the game and ultimately find the White Mask. Mysidia is a kingdom of mages to the southwest. It's got some pretty unique ancient looking architecture and its out of the way location makes sense for a mage society. Their spell shop is understandably huge too. I buy the tome Holy for Furion. It says it deals holy damage when used in battle. Do I have any idea what that means? No, but it sounds cool, so I bought it. They also have a bookshelf containing the ancient text which will help explain some of the terms you've been learning from the game. In the center of the town there's a chamber with a statue where we can place the white mask on. We now have to get a black mask located on a tiny faraway tropical island. I had noticed this place on the map the whole time I played and was honestly scared to go near it. I assumed since it was so far away in the middle of the ocean, it wanted to be left alone. When you get there, it's a mossy cavern dungeon with really easy enemies at this point in the game. It's a pretty lengthy dungeon with tons of stairs that lead basically nowhere, so the random encounters were really weighing on me here. The boss guarding the treasure are 4 bighorns. In my fight, they just did physical attacks, and there were wild versions of them I had faced earlier in this dungeon, so I knew how to handle them. After beating them, we get the Black Mask. With the Black Mask, we can go to the Cave of Mysidia. After a maze, you come across your doppelganger. Using the Black Mask on it will make it vanish so we can proceed further. This would end up being one of the tougher dungeons in the game for me. There were enemies that could drain my MP, which my team relies on for healing and offensive magic. Then there were so many dead ends and monster ambushes, but by the skin of my teeth, I found the important key item, the Crystal Rod. We now have to take this rod to the Mysidian Tower, but en route, we're swallowed up by the Leviathan. But when we get inside, we realize Layla has gone missing from our party. I know it may look like liquid hot magma, but I actually think it's the stomach acid of the mighty Leviathan that damages you as you walk over it. Although I had never played this game, I had grown up solving dungeons within the bowels of mighty fish. Deeper within the Leviathan, we actually meet with other people who have been swallowed up by it. One of these guys says he's been living here for 10 years and says you should just give up and get used to being here. We learn from one of the old men that the Leviathan actually specifically targets anyone who brings a crystal rod near the tower. So we were basically waving a sign around saying swallow us. Inside the Leviathan, we find the dragoon named Rickard. We tell him about the ultimate tome we were going for at the tower before getting swallowed up. He mentions that he is also looking for it and joins our team. This is a cool addition to the team, since I had heard about dragoons in the game for a while, and we watched their former kingdom fall to ruins. And he just looks badass. His portrait makes him look like Batman. Rickard is really strong, with a strength stat of 70 and an attack of 79, along with a spear level of 7. He also already comes equipped with great items too. Rickard says there is a boat guarded by a monster. That boat may be the way to get out of here, and in the next room, we confront the monster, a round worm. It immediately takes out Rickard with one shot because he's a bit of a glass cannon, unfortunately. After casting a bunch of berserk on my other members and reviving Rickard with Furion, we overcome the roundworm. We get back to our ship and escape the Leviathan. Don't ask me how that worked because it kind of just shows us popping back up on the overworld. Free from the Leviathan, we can finally enter the tower. Inside the ancient tower, there are common enemies we've seen plenty of times before, but one that I especially want to revenge on, vampire girls. We've come a long way since I crossed the invisible line into their territory and they destroyed my entire party. Yeah! On the 3rd floor of the tower, we encounter actual liquid hot magma, and the enemies here are brutal. There are basilisks that can use gaze to turn my team into stone. As we ascend, we're met by a mage who says I must defeat him in order to ascend further. He turns into a mighty fire gigas, very physically tough and weak to blizzard attacks. We make quick work of him with my usage of Berserk. Pretty much, if the enemy was weak to physical attacks, my default tactic was to cast Berserk on my heavy hitters so they'd land a lot more attacks. The very next floor after the Fire Gigas changes the theme of the dungeon into an icy one. And on this floor, you fight the Ice Gigas. I had access to flame-based weapons I picked up from previous floors, which worked well against it. The next floor leads to, you guessed it, the next elemental guardian, a Thunder Gigas. He was definitely the toughest because he was resisting most of my physical attacks, and I was running really low on MP with no ethers. It was making me really nervous for what lied ahead. On my way up to the next floor was a chest guarded by a dragon, and this thing kicked the living hell out of my team. It has a powerful ice storm attack that was pretty much impossible to avoid, but for defeating it I get the black robe. It enhances intellect and is resistant to elemental attacks. I give it to Maria as it fits her style. In the next room, we're met by our old friend, Minwoo. He uses every bit of strength he has left to destroy the seal. He gave me everything he had and passes away. But grieve not, this is what he was meant to do. In the room that was unsealed, we find the Ultima Tome, and we can now leave the tower. After I leave the tower and return to the rebels, I notice towns I had been to before are entirely destroyed now. Like you can't enter them at all, and the enemies just outside of them, where early game encounters were, are replaced by powerful late game encounters. I thought this was a really cool detail to show the corruption of the Empire slowly consuming the world. Back at Fynn, a cyclone has formed. We can't enter it now, but we can fix that. Back at the castle, we meet up with Princess Hilda. She says the Emperor is the one controlling the winds to form the cyclone. The cyclone is what finished off towns like Poft, Paloom, Altair, and Gatria, which is why I couldn't enter them when we came back. Gordon says unless we can sprout wings, we can't get up into the cyclone. We'll figure that out soon, but hey, look, it's Layla. When the ship went down with the Leviathan, she got separated from us but managed to survive. In a hidden chamber within the castle, we can use the old pendant on a magical mirror. We see an image of an egg hatching into a young wyvern. If you remembered us putting the egg in the water back near the Castle Deist, that's the same egg that hatched. The wyvern speeds toward the castle, and since we have Rickard, a dragoon, he can unite with the dragon. The wyvern and Rickard can help us enter the mighty cyclone. Within it is another Imperial dungeon. I'm sure you could guess this dungeon has a lot of really strong enemies. But the scariest ones are always the vampire girls, and for the first time, a vampire lady. I shower them with holy light and flame. Wood golems are much more intimidating. They're tough and could put your team to sleep just by hitting you. While opening a chest, I get ambushed by a green dragon. This thing is brutal. It scoffs at any magical damage done to it, and the same goes for weapon-based damage. I needed Guy to be my savior because he was the only thing that could do significant damage. The problem with the green dragon is that it was smart and it only attacked Guy, killing him twice. So I had to revive him with Furion multiple times, use Berserk on him with Maria so when Guy could actually hit, it would slay the dragon. After the dragon fight, I enter the throne room where the Emperor himself is waiting. He says we're unworthy to fight him and sends in some generic royal guards that die immediately. Am I worthy yet? Apparently not, because he sends 3 more at us. Okay, you know I'm worthy now. I'm beginning to think you're just too scared to fight me, oh powerful Emperor. Now he fights us for real. We take out his royal guards and the wood golem. The Emperor himself is extremely weak and we get through it quick. The Emperor seemingly dies, but I was pretty sure this wasn't the end because it was too easy and the music was just generic music we've heard before. I may be new to the series, but I know that if you're actually doing the final fight, you're going to hear some badass music. Back at Fynn, the princess congratulates us and wants to celebrate. We dance the night away in the throne room, but then a soldier comes in and says the Dark Knight, Leon, has declared himself emperor. He reorganized the empire after the defeat and says he'll slaughter us all. Hilda wonders why our own friend Leon would be the Dark Knight and declare himself emperor. For me, I have no emotional attachment to Leon, so it's really not a shocker for me. We get to name him in the beginning of the game, but I never actually got to interact with him, so if this was supposed to feel like some big betrayal, it really doesn't. Maria says that she can talk some sense into her brother, but he's at the Imperial Castle, deep in the mountains. Gordon tells us Paul has broken into the castle once before, so we go to his house to ask him how. Sid is also there, but is about to pass away. Before he does, he hands over his ship to us. There is a lot of death and destruction in this game. It makes the story feel like there are real stakes, and I like it. You're seeing allies slowly be killed and cities you once knew be totally destroyed. The urgency feels authentic as you enter the late game. Paul mentions the time he broke into the castle, he needed a kite to land on the roof. We don't actually need a kite though, we can use Sid's airship. We fly down to the castle to confront the Dark Knight. Inside the castle, it's another maze-like dungeon. The most diabolical duo of all time was the Devil's Bloom with Skulls. The Skulls can cast insanely powerful ice spells, and the Devil's Bloom can make my characters confused and fight each other. They're smart too, because Guy is clearly my strongest physical character, and the Bloom always happened to go for him. So once Guy is confused, he would just beat the shit out of himself. Does Guy speak Bloom? If so, let me know now, because maybe he can tell them to stop. After 8 levels to this castle, we find the Dark Knight, Leon. Maria tries to talk to him, but it seems like we're gonna have to fight this out. Until... the Emperor himself has returned. He wants his throne back and tells Leon to piss off. Leon refuses to give the Empire back, but the Emperor doesn't really care because he's gained powers from hell itself. Rickard calls in his wyvern to come save us. We arrive at Castle Fynn with Leon, and it's a little bit awkward. We explain that the Emperor has risen from hell, and after a very unconvincing conversation with Princess Hilda, Leon joins our party. I wasn't given any indication he was under a spell or felt remorseful. All Maria said was, hey, at least we both want to fight the Emperor, and he's like, okay, fine, I'll be a rebel. And everybody's just dandy with that. Leon's stats are pretty mixed. He has a very high attack stat and great accuracy. He's also a dual wielder of swords and axes. We gather information about the Jade Passage near Mysidia, and that's where we're going to head to next. But first we have a detour, back at Castle Deist, home of the Dragoons. We tell the mother we spoke to earlier about Rickard's passing, and she thanks us for telling her. She hands us the Dragoon's most treasured possession, Excalibur. It's an extremely powerful sword, and we are going to need it. I grind for a while with my new blade, then head for the Jade Passage. It's a glittery cavern with purple crystals jetting out from dark stone. It feels otherworldly and mystical. This place has insane enemies like abyss worms who can hit for pretty much all of my character's HP when they attack. At the end of the dungeon, there's a teleportation pad that will take us to the Castle of Hell, Pandemonium, and it has such badass music, so I know this must actually be the end of the game. And the enemies were going to be ready for us too, like Mithril Golems and Lamia Queens. This dungeon is a confusing, hellish maze. There's more dead ends, empty rooms than anywhere else. And out of nowhere, I fight Tiamat, who was guarding a chest. Yeah, like one of the strongest bosses from the first game is a chest guardian. I guess he's been sitting in hell since the last time I saw him or something. All jokes aside though, I already like recurring things from previous games showing up here. Like Tiamat from the first game, or how chocobos will be a recurring thing. Then I find Zombie Borgin in a chest too. This traitor killed Joseph. He is just as easy as the first time. That was for Joseph, you bastard. Other mini-bosses like the Iron Giant and Astaroth show up through chest openings or just random encounters. This is what I've always wanted to play Final Fantasy for. I love the mythical enemies I've been fighting. I think it's a combination of the names and the sprites. That stuff just really does it for me. After a perilous several hours navigating carefully through the castle and using literally all of my items to top off my HP and MP, I enter the Emperor's final throne room. The final fight with the Emperor is ridiculous. Obviously, he's the most powerful boss in the game, and that makes sense, but each one of his shots kills my character in one hit no matter what, and he heals from pretty much any damage you've done against him with each attack. And then awkwardly enough, his really badass moves like Starfall actually don't do that much. And I had to hope for RNG here and there so that he wouldn't use his physical attack to immediately kill one of my party members and heal all of his health. In the fight where I finally beat him, I got crazy lucky with RNG. He just wasn't really attacking that much, instead using things like Blind or Dispel when it wasn't really relevant to what was going on. This allowed me to set up Haste and Berserk on my damage dealers. He still took out a few of my party members, so it was close, but in the end, we sent his ass to hell. Again, we beat the Emperor, for real this time. We're met by the surviving companions and people we've met along the way, and even a cameo from our friends. Hilda says they will rebuild the kingdom now that peace has been restored. As for our group, Leon leaves us to do his own thing. I think he had just been indoctrinated or something during his time in captivity and he's too far gone. He says himself that too much has happened for him to want to remain in the group. With the Emperor dead, the monsters disappear, and peace is restored to the land. The Final Fantasy II experience was a mixed bag, but ultimately still enjoyable. The leveling system with weapons and spells was really unique. Early game I enjoyed it because you notice improvements the more you're using weapons and spells. At first you're going to miss with them, but then you start landing. Then you start hitting harder. It feels good and makes sense to how real life works. If you want to get better at something, you practice with it over and over again. But I'm going to be totally honest, I still don't think I understand the rank progression at all. This is what an explanation looks like online when you ask. If an explanation looks like this, it's probably too complicated. I think the idea was really interesting, but its implementation felt clunky. I did enjoy the dungeons, especially the late game ones. I'm a bit of a masochist when it comes to them. The longer and more torturous they are, the more accomplished I feel when I complete them. Where Final Fantasy II really shines is how much of a leap the story takes after the first game. It starts with a bang as the Empire strikes at the kingdom. You really do feel like a rebel, helping fight for a cause by going on missions for the princess. You have companions and friends dying left and right. These kinds of story moments are things I appreciate because it makes it feel like there's real stakes. You never know who may die next, and nothing was spoiled for me, so it had me on edge. Watching the world slowly be torn apart by the monsters, the Leviathan, and a cyclone reinforced that this world was going to fall into ruin if you didn't succeed. I was left very impressed by the leaps the second entry made from a narrative perspective, but it's not perfect either. Much of the game you're chasing down the Ultima Tome, which is a powerful spell but isn't required to beat the game or be used at all. I felt like maybe it should have been a key item that gets used in a cutscene or something when defeating the Emperor, just to make that part of the journey feel like it actually mattered. Final Fantasy II is seen as a black sheep to the franchise. I've only played 2 entries now, so it's hard to compare it to much else. For me, I enjoyed it for the most part, and I'm glad I played it. I agree with many of the criticisms about leveling, but I will say I didn't hate it. And I think it came down to execution more than being a bad idea outright. Folks, that's all I've got for Final Fantasy II. Thank you for making it to the end of the video. My Patreon is free, so check that out if you'd like to see what I'm up to next. But if you become a paid patron or a YouTube channel member, I'll give you a shout out in these videos. Thank you to my YouTube channel members, Quinn, Chris Redbeard, Brewham, Eugenia, Netrunner 2K2, and Joe Cadiz. And to my patrons, Shio, Lyra, Eon Kane, Martane, Smudge, Brooks, Jonathan C., Andrew PH, Rogue S, Falk84, Maths, Soul, and Igby the Ampharos guy. Thanks again for watching. I'll see you in the next one.
What the hell do you mean you can speak beaver?